2012 drought put a strain on forage supplies, which were already reduced due to drought in Texas the previous year. No matter the type of forage you're using this year or your assumption of its quality, UNL Extension beef specialist Rick Rasby says it's probably a good idea to sample and test those forages before feeding.
Every year I think that's a good practice because forage quality can vary. It not only varies amongst the different forages, but also even within a forage, because there'll be good quality grass hay and there'll be poor quality grass hay out there, and there'll be grass hay that's average. And so if you just assume it's average, that's probably not the right assumption. So the idea would be to test it and just see where it's at quality wise.
You've got your probe with you.
Yeah.
Explain to me how you're going to go about doing it.
Well, the thing would be is that labs won't take a grab sample, especially of hay, and so you'll need to use a probe, and you can get those probably at the extension office. Usually most of them have a probe that you can check out, and this is the way to get an unbiased sample out of that bale. And so the idea would be you need to use a probe, and then the other thing would be is to make sure that you take a sample of a representative sample of the hay that you have out there. And so if you get an area that you've basically baled up and you have 40 big round bales, you'd probably want to sample somewhere between 12 to 15 of those. And so you sample each of them one time, right? And so then you take the sample and put it into a bag, and the idea would be there is to make sure that you label the bag properly so that when it's sent into the lab, they know exactly what sample that you have there and that they what they're trying to test that against. And most labs are going to have NIR testing, and so they're going to go into the right library to basically compare this feed that you send them to the sample in that library.
What are the three things that maybe you're most worried about them sampling for?
Yeah, if you're cow-calf, I would sample for moisture, and then I'd sample for protein, or at least test for protein, and then test for energy in the form of TDN. And so those would be the three biggies. And if you had summer annuals, I'd sure enough test for nitrates too. It's probably a good idea always to test for nitrates in summer annuals, and then just make sure you understand the analysis that they send back, because labs will basically send the analysis back in nitrates or nitrate nitrogen, and so you want to make sure that you know what the toxic level is for either one of those, and make sure that you know what they've tested it for and in.
As you go west in this state, there was probably some dryland corn that got burnt up, and there could be maybe some nitrate concerns if you use that to pack silage with. What would the process be if you wanted to test that silage?
Well, that's a good point, and really if you had damaged corn in any way, shape, or form that maybe stunted the growth activity there, silage is a good way to harvest that, because in the ensiling process you'll basically eliminate 40 to 60% of the nitrates, and so that would be a good way to basically use that feed or store that feed. And so from a silage standpoint, you don't use a probe to test to sample silage. It's basically a grab sample, and you're going to take a sample of more silage than what you need. And basically what I do is I look at the face of that pit and go to the right side, in the middle, and the left side, and sample top, middle, and bottom. Put it into a bucket, mix it up, put it out onto a piece of paper, mix it up, and then you only need to send in whatever bag they give you from the lab, and so you don't need to send in a bushel of silage. But the idea would be to continue to mix and sample smaller portions of that.
Take it from the thirds.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
And then they're going to give it back to you, and you're going to read it for maybe if you're using it in a feedlot on a dry matter basis, correct?
Yeah, in both cases,
okay.
Cow-calf or feedlot, you'd want to look at the dry matter, because the nutrients needs for cattle are in dry matter basis, and so the idea would be as you compare your feed that you have to the dry matter column in that feed analysis. And the thing is that if you do it early enough, now if you know where the gaps are, let's say you have a feed that doesn't meet the protein requirement, you can go out and start looking for protein supplements that fit your operation.